My first development deal saved me, and no, this is not just a hook. I was denied my green card and even deported in 2018. I didn't have true credit and not enough money. So here's how I pulled off my first 4-unit development deal and how you can do the same. Hi, my name is Josephine. I'm a real estate developer here in Nashville, Tennessee. I found a developer academy where we're helping all over the country fix and flippers investors get into the developer seat. I've been developing for 8.5 years, and I've built an 8-figure pipeline within less than 2 years. Now, I've been through the ups and downs of development, so if you're looking for a flashy channel, this is not for you. This channel is sharing the true authenticity of real estate development and sharing the journey, and my goal is for you to truly learn and master this skill, because this skill changed my life. So this is how my development journey began. Let's zoom all the way back to 2017. I'm German. I studied here in the US, came here as a D1 athlete, I have a finance background, but no ground-up construction experience, okay? So we flipped a bunch of properties when I first started in 2017, my former business partner and I. At the time, when I updated my paperwork for the green card, we just said, okay, we have a development business, but we're fix and flipping property. The government doesn't see fix and flipping actually as a business for immigration purposes, okay? So that was a big pivot for me, because that's ultimately what got me into ground-up construction. The American government pushed me into new construction development, and thank God they did. So in 2018, I was actually denied my green card because we were just recycling value and not building ground-up value on US soil, hiring Americans. So that's when I actually was like, okay, I can build original value. I just need to figure out a new construction project. So I needed at least a $2 million project. I needed to have some size also for my green card application. So I ended up driving around the neighborhoods here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I found this pocket, Chestnut Hill, that I really liked. And it was actually at the time a community park. It was pretty rough at the time. We were one of the first developers in that area, actually. And so people used it as a community park. And I wondered, what about putting 4 homes here? A, it makes the whole neighborhood safer, but B, it's just 5 minutes to downtown. We're probably gonna even have a skyline. This is perfect. It all started by A, having to solve for the problem of, hey, I need my green card. I wanna stay here, okay? This is the land of the American dream, opportunities. We need to make this happen. But B, I had the vision of providing ground-up value going into new construction. So once I stumbled upon this pocket, I was like, okay, no, this is actually community impact, and this brings everything together. This is my project. And so I thought, okay, how can I make this happen? At the time, there weren't coaching programs. There weren't really, honestly, these mentorships like that. People just focus on fix and flipping, wholesaling, you name it. And so I started educating myself by going down to Metro Codes, asking questions. Okay, what do I need for this, for that? Started understanding, okay, who are the players, right? We need a builder. So what's the difference between a general contractor that helps fix and flippers versus someone that wants to build new construction? I asked myself all these different questions. And so I started doing my due diligence by just getting really curious and diving into it, asking a ton of questions, and then basically building my team. So let's talk about the details of exactly how I did this. As part of building my team, I actually connected with a realtor really early on because I wanted to make sure that we could sell the homes for what we wanted to sell them for. Now, my former business partner was a realtor, but he focused more on a different area and more the fix and flip side. Now, at that point in time, I wasn't even licensed yet, okay? So we had this realtor help us vetting the deal from an exit strategy standpoint. And once we understood, okay, all right, we really have something here, then what I started doing is I asked more questions about zoning, right? I wanted to make sure that I understood whether we would be able to do what we set out to do. Now, keep in mind, this was actually just one plot of land, about 0.3 acres. And I needed to understand, okay, what was my rationale of thinking I could put 4 homes there? Quite frankly, I just looked at the width and the depth of that lot. I thought, okay, this lot is sure as heck too large for 2, and I think we could put 4 here. We just need enough density. I needed to have at least about a $2 million project. So what I ended up doing is I looked at, okay, this is an R6 zoning, so it needs to be a minimum of 6,000 square feet. But what if I subdivide the lot? Can I then put 4 homes on it? I actually connected with a land use attorney. At the time, that was pretty much a more expensive way of getting started. Now there are better ways to get into this game, which we'll talk more about later. But he actually helped me so much trying to figure out, okay, we can start with the first 2 And strategically, actually, we're just going to build the first 2 and then we're going to subdivide. Because at the time, that allowed us to grandfather in that we could build the first 2 on this one lot. And then when we subdivided, we could create another lot. So we strategically positioned the footprint of these builds more to the left side. It was a corner lot. And then we could subdivide pretty much really halfway through the whole lot width and then put another 2 units on the right-hand side. Now, again, you got to be really familiar with zoning. Super important. That's a good starting point, right? Understanding your exits, understanding what it zones for, what needs to happen. But for my very first deal, I actually really pulled off a subdivision. This is a miniature version of a subdivision, right? I subdivided the land and then I didn't have to rezone it because I subdivided it. As I continued to build my team, the realtor as well as the land attorney both shared my vision, right? It was very important because you have to have people that are on your team that understand the vision that you put out. Now, this was along one of the main corridors in Nashville, so absolute ideal. And I just couldn't believe that this lot was even vacant, right? When you're able to spot opportunity, it's all about, okay, how do I make this happen? And so I'll share with you here next of how I further went about this deal. Just to clarify, we did not own the land at that point in time. We didn't even have a contract on it. I wanted to make sure that I could wrap my head around this opportunity and that I could do what I wanted to do before I took it under contract. That's just what it took for me to get comfortable. And again, that's like your learning period, right? You have to build the knowledge in order to be confident and then make a move. Now, this realtor also helped us write the initial contract to secure the land. We were just talking through all the items that we needed, the length of the due diligence time. She let us know what the seller's head was at. We ultimately submitted a contract for $250,000. At the time, that was golden. Now you can't even get land for this anymore here in downtown Nashville. But essentially what this translates to is $62,500 per unit for the land itself, per pad. We call it per pad. And so we ended up getting this land under contract, and then that allowed us for additional due diligence time. So that's really when we actually then hired the land use attorney. Before that, we just had some preliminary conversation, and then ultimately we started working with him of really getting things done. Keep this in mind today, you don't need a land use attorney for these type of projects. At the time, there just was no coaching, there was no really true mentorship. So that was just my way of getting resourceful, of getting into the game. But you have to build up the knowledge in order to feel confident. So what was my next problem? Guess what? I didn't have the $250,000 at the time. My business partner and I, we bootstrapped the company. We pretty much just flipped, right? We put everything that we made back into the company. But we were using that money primarily to keep the flips going. So we needed investors. Now, I got started in fix and flipping in 2017 by also raising capital. I figured I'll just find investors and I'll bring them on the deal and we'll do the deal that way. And that's pretty much what we did. So before I started the first flipping company in 2017 with my former business partner, I actually met a guy on a deal in New York City. And I was thinking, why not ask him? He knows how I work. And I think that he could have an interest in investing in a real estate development deal. I know he wanted to have aggressive returns. And I figured that real estate development was right up his alley as well. I actually networked here in Nashville locally tremendously. I said yes to every single opportunity to meet people. And so I started pitching this deal, found this local investor that I pitched this deal to. And he said, if you can find another guy, I'll match him. So now what I did was I took the $250,000 that we needed for the land acquisition, added some cushion because I knew we needed interest carry and then some additional buffer. So I said, okay, $350,000 really should get the deal done from an equity standpoint. So I went back to the local investor, said, okay, I think I have a second guy. Would you come in for $175,000? And then I went back to the New York City investor, asked him for $175,000 and told him that I have a local guy that would come in, provide the second $175,000. So totaling $350,000. Now, keep in mind, this is us looking to do a 4-unit deal as our first new construction deal. So now let's just recap where I'm at in this deal right now. We're under contract for $250,000 on this property, and it's a corner lot. It's basically sitting within 3 streets. And I'm understanding that I can build 4 homes, but I got to start with the first 2 homes first, and then I can subdivide and then build the other 2 homes, okay? At that point, we figured, okay, it's probably going to be a 4-bedroom, 4-bath type of product. I wanted to do a rooftop because we thought we're going to have a skyline, right? We flew up a drone, realized we have a view. So that's what we wanted to do. Now, at that point in time, I also knew, okay, I had private funding for $350,000. So next, I figured I'll need a construction loan, right? Now, in order to get a construction loan, I realized, okay, well, based on the flipping experience, I need someone that I can also pitch that has built ground up construction, right? Now, and I think this is something that a lot of people get wrong that I just see over and over is how you position yourself. So what I ended up doing was I had the land use attorney that obviously backed us on the legal side, provided some strategy, their own zoning, but also I shop for general contractors that have built ground up. And I actually really walked their products to make sure the quality was up to par, right? I figured that we needed to really build that full team first, make sure that we have really the GC confirmed and that we obviously knew exactly, okay, who's going to be the architect, and then we'll pitch the full team to the bank. So that was my plan. And I just really reverse engineered that by doing the due diligence upfront and asking people a bunch of questions. Now, from there, we defined that architect. Again, we decided on a GC, and I started putting everything together into a bank package. And that's actually still a bank package that now our members in my community use. And I still use every day. So this package I sent to banks, okay? And I positioned the team experience where we listed truly what the GC has built in the last year, all of our flips that we've done in the last year, the type of projects like the architect worked on, the attorney worked on, the realtor worked on, but basically making sure that someone like a banker would feel comfortable doing a deal with us the way we've built the team. So there's one thing that I did not factor in. And remember, the area that we were in at the time was very underdeveloped, okay? So actually, in fact, one street was the main prostitution line in Nashville. As you can imagine, a Southerner would say it was a hoot getting this to build. Now, it took me 24 banks, okay? So 23 banks actually said no to this deal. We legitimately had a meeting on site where I even met my CPA and another banker, and that bank was deemed to be more entrepreneurially focused. They got approached by a prostitute. So that's what I had to overcome. I did not factor in really operationally how difficult that project was going to be. I'm going to foreshadow some of that and I'll tell you more later. But ultimately, it took so many banks to get this project underwritten. It was truly a form of redlining. So I had that vision and I needed that project done. Keep in mind, my green card is even dependent on this, okay? So there was no option of not doing this project. I was going to figure this out, whatever it took. And so the 24th bank finally ended up saying yes. The banker shared the same vision, said, okay, you're early, but I think you guys have what it takes. Let's do this deal. Now, there's another piece that I did not factor in, but I figured I'll come up with a solution. As I shared earlier, I didn't really have credit, right? I was not even having a long enough credit history. I didn't have a personal credit card that could hardly do anything. I had millions of construction loans on the flipping side through the business. So I knew I needed someone that probably co-signs on this deal. So I had a really good relationship with the New York City investor and essentially went to him and said, hey, listen, would you be open in helping me get this deal done? He also, by the way, is an immigrant. And he said yes. So we negotiated a number that he felt comfortable with. It was just a flat fee. And so he said, okay, I'll basically co-sign for up to this amount. So I went back to the banker, asked him, hey, would this work for you? And he agreed. So we got literally the full funding structured and a win-win for everybody in order for us to do this first deal. But it took us getting really resourceful in order to pull this first deal off. I want to point out a couple of key highlights that a lot of people miss. It's really important of how you position yourself, right? You need to be a doer. You need to be able to come through. You need to be resourceful. Don't basically go with, no, it's not possible. Figure out who do you need in order to make it possible. And then also, don't give up. Was it easy? Absolutely not. But it's a persistent and the drive to get it done. And so the positioning was really core. And what that meant also the team experience. You have to build a team that has the experience. You don't necessarily have to have the experience for your first deal, but the people on the team have to have the experience. And then it's your job to market that. People need to feel comfortable that your team will pull this project through and that the quality will be up to par and that you'll be able to sell where you need to sell in order for the project to be a success. Now let's talk about the details of this construction budget. I just wanted to give you the big picture overview there on how we funded this deal. I figured we would need at least 20% down. That was my rationale. That's really what I used to back into. So The $350,000 that I raised from private investors represents about 20% of the total deal, okay? We had about a $1.4 million construction budget. So it was literally 1.35 roughly. The 350,000 is a 20%, and then we went to the bank, that 24th bank paid the 80% into the project. So the last bank that said yes paid in 80% of the project. So it's an 80% loan to cost, okay? And so we supplied the 20% down payment, their equity, in form of the private investor funding. So I also want to share with you how I really thought about building the construction budget. As I shared earlier, as part of building my team, I found a general contractor that we were really comfortable with. And so he helped supply the construction budget. We negotiated a fee with him. Initially, he wanted to have a little bit more, but at the time I said, listen, I think $23,500 will be fair enough per unit for you to build this. And so that's what we agreed upon. Then he became the general contractor for this project. So we felt really comfortable with the construction budget because we used actually numbers that he had in his last project. So we had current construction numbers there. And then we also knew from our flipping side what we paid for some of the trades. As I mentioned before, we bought the land for $250,000, though we raised $350,000 from private investors. So that is also a portion of interest carry and having a buffer. You don't want to run out of cash. So you always want to raise more capital than what you think you need. And then we had about $1.4 million earmarked there for the construction. The remainder we got funded with a bank that said yes, which was an LTC loan to cost value approach. That's how we funded our first deal. Now, we paid the realtor the 3% on the buy side and then on the sell side. So aside from securing bank financing, we also agreed on an internal structure. The investors got 50% of the profits, and then my business partner and I each got 25% of the profits. Now, let's talk about what this all resulted to. About 18 months later, I made $62,500 from this transaction. Now, granted, this was me learning the new construction process. I got paid for learning, okay? So this was a really good result. Would you like to get paid $62,000 to learn a new skill and now go rinse and repeat it? Absolutely. So the whole project returned $250,000 in profit. As I mentioned earlier, the investors took 50%, and then my business partner and I, we each got 25%. And I learned so much throughout this project, okay? This project was operationally very tough to manage because I built in a very underdeveloped area. So safety was a core problem that we dealt with like day in and day out. Over the course of the project, I went there at least every other day, but we also had a team member that went by there every single week taking photos to document the process, which is really important that you do because you don't know whether you need the pictures later on, know exactly where plumbing went, how something looked before drywall went in. Very helpful to have that documentation. We started pre-selling the units as well. We pre-sold 2 units and then we sold the rest after we got done. I suggest that when you're doing your projects that you do try to pre-sell as well after you're done with framing and people can understand the vision. That way you're getting ahead of the game, right? You can always put your listings up and coming soon so you're not acquiring even days on market. You just need to really make sure you have an amazing realtor. So what we ended up doing is we built a project website. We really marketed left and right. We had even boards with the finishes so that people could understand what we were putting together. And we had an amazing realtor. She worked that project really hard. So as you're doing your first build, I want you to know exactly who you're going to be working with on selling this project. Because again, that person makes or breaks your project, right? If they're doing a poor job selling the project, then everything that you worked for may not come through. Right? You need to make sure that you protect your margin, you protect your project by finding the right salesperson for your deal. Let's talk about the most important part of why this project saved me. I ended up getting my green card accepted in January of 2019. And that was all by actually pivoting into ground-up construction, developing from scratch, original value on US soil, hiring Americans. So the government pushed me to get into ground-up development, and thank God they did. I got my green card, which is absolutely huge. Now, almost 10 years later, I am a dual citizen. So development really has been everything for me. It really shaped my journey, and I know it shapes so many other people's journeys. We have so many people in our community that really are now building ground up, able to quit their W-2 job, taking more control of their time and schedule. Keep in mind, I did this deal with zero of my own money, no credit. I was under the pressure of turning around my green card process. This skill set is worth so much that can change your trajectory, can change your family's life, You already have a head start. You're most likely already American, have some form of credit. Even if the credit is shit, we can build that. The point is, you already are so much further ahead than where I was when I started, okay? So if you want to get into this game, make sure to check out the free roadmap down below. That's my step-by-step guide that just takes you through the process that I mapped out here on my first deal. If you know you're already there, you're ready to do this, development is your next step. DM me start on Instagram and let's connect. Let's talk about how your first deal could look like. Listen, it's all about one action. See you in the next video.